ओ ओम श्री गणेशाय नमः। ओम श्री सरस्वत्यै नमः। ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। सच्चिदानन्दरूपाय विश्वोत्पत्त्यादिहेतवे तापत्रयविनाशाय श्रीकृष्णाय वयं नुमः। श्रीकृष्णाय वयं नुमः। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवं। परमानन्दमाधवं परमानन्दमाधवम्। ॐ वाङ्मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविराविर्म एधि वेदस्य म आणिस्थः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासीः अनेनाधीतेन अहोरात्रान् संदधामि ऋदं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्माम् अवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारमवतु वक्तारम्। ॐ शान्ति शान्तिः शान्तिः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। श्रीकृष्ण गोविंद हरे मुरारे हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेवा जिह्वे पिबस्वामृतमेतदेव गोविन्द दामोदर माधवेति। हे कृष्ण हे यादव हे सखेति। हे कृष्ण हे यादव हे सखेति। हे कृष्ण हे यादव हे सखेति। नारायण नारायण। Verse number 62 and 63. We'll continue from where we left last time, but I'll read the verse first. ध्यायतो विषयान् पुंसः संगस्तेषूपजायते संगात् संजायते कामः कामात् क्रोधोऽभिजायते क्रोधाद् भवति सम्मोहः, सम्मोहात् स्मृतिविभ्रमः, स्मृतिभ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशः, बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति. Supreme consciousness Bhagwan Krishna, through these two verses 62 and 63, is trying to warn us why self control is of utmost importance, especially for a seeker. And not only for a seeker, anyone who wants to achieve things in life, definitely for such a person, self control or some kind of exercising some kind of control is of paramount importance if one wants to really achieve what they set as a goal in their life. I'm talking about the good goals I'm talking about here. So you will see any achiever definitely has a life of tapas. Tapas means penance. What is the penance? Penance here does not necessarily means leaving everything, going into the forest and residing there away, cut off from the world. That is definitely one kind of penance which people who want to only gain spirituality and want to achieve and become one with the supreme consciousness do those things. But even if you want to achieve good things in life or want to achieve goals which you have set in your life, you definitely need to have some kind of penance. I'm just giving you small examples for you to understand that students who set out to achieve great career goals in their life definitely exercise penance and kind of self control so that they are able to focus their energies correctly to the right direction and achieve what they set out for. So through these two verses, Bhagwan Krishna is emphasizing the fact why he spoke so much about the self control, why self control is important. And through these verses, Bhagwan says, alas, this is the a place where a seeker falls. This is the place where a spiritual seeker slips and due to the inadvertence completely gets derailed in the journey of spirituality. So I don't think any other philosophy could outline the kind of ladder of fall so beautifully the way Bhagwan has put out. Remember, through this ladder of fall, Bhagwan has followed a particular sequence which I brought out in the last session. We will see, from where we left in the last session so that we can continue. You will see in the podcast I have put, verses 62 and 63 1, because the verses 62 and 63 has got so much depth. I'll try to cover it as much as possible, but it would need, there will be, 62 and 63, part 2 and part 3 also. May not be part 3 completely, but up to part 3 I'll try and cover as much as possible through these about these verses what Bhagwan is trying to say. So when Bhagwan says dhyayato vishayan punsah sanghasteshu upajayate, I told you in the last session, I'm just trying to highlight some portions so that we can continue from there. It is not about thinking of an object alone. There are some preset conditions of thinking, because every object which we come across us, and we may partially or temporarily think of those objects also, but all of them don't convert into desire, all of them don't convert into sangha the way Bhagwan says, attachment or hankering over them or trying to chase after them. It doesn't convert like that. So I told you two things in the last session also. I'm just repeating it so that we can continue from where we left in the last. So for that, at thinking of the object, the two preset things that we must have, the thinking should be associated with that this thing is going to beautify my life, provided it comes in my life. Also along with it, that this thing is going to give happiness to me in my life. When we have these two preset things attached to an object, and then we see that achieving this or gaining this object, or when once this object enters my life or comes near me, I'm going to gain peace, I am going to get that solace, I'm going to get comfortable in my life, I'm going to lead a peaceful life after that. When an intellect thinks like that, and with these preset conditions, when one person thinks of an object, What are the two conditions I said? That this thing is going to add beauty to my life. This thing is going to drive happiness. This object is going to drive happiness. And I told you again and again, when I say object, please is attach objects and people with it. So I will use the word object to simplify the description and explanation of this verse. So when somebody thinks of an object, that this thing is going to add beauty to my life, this thing is going to give happiness to me in my life, I am going to derive happiness from this when once it enters my life. And then intellect starts to think that by gaining this object, I will have a peaceful life going forward, my life will be more settled. Once a person thinks like that about an object, and that too not just once or twice, for a stretch of time, for a period of time, I'm not using long period of time, because the long becomes I have to sit down and define that long. So it's not that sit down and think once it's going to happen, no. But again and again, once a person thinks like that for a period of time, then what happens, the kind of result which arises in the intellect of that person, that is what Bhagwan has given and coined the word called Sangha. In literal meaning of Sangha is actually attachment. If I literally translate the word Sangha, Sangha means attachment. But here, you should translate the word Sangha a little bit differently, that Sangha is actually what? When we start to develop an interest towards that object. इन हिंदी विल से व्हेन एंड हमारे अंदर रुचि उत्पन्न हो जाए उस वस्तु के लिए, when we start to gain interest towards that, attraction towards that object or interest in that object, when our intellect generates interest in that object, and that means what, our intellect slowly gradually starts to turn towards that object, starts to think of that object. Turns, unmukta means turn, means it starts to look for that object. This is the point where Bhagwan says, till this point one can exercise control. Your control is possible, you can do it on your own when dhyayatah and sangha, these two steps a person can control, well, provided it doesn't cross the step from here. One person can himself or herself put an effort and control till this point. This is the zero barrier till where you can exercise control and stop. But once it crosses this zero barrier, then remember, it has gone outside your control. Then you would need external help. You would need help to actually exercise or come back to control. That's what Bhagwan is trying to say. So this is that point till where there is a possibility of you trying to control this situation and trying to turn it towards you, rather than it going out of your hand or going out of your sway. In these, till these 2 points, when one person exercises control, definitely that person is going to gain success in gaining that. That's why for a seeker, it is utmost importance and for a seeker to remember, these are the 2 points where the seeker has to be extremely cautious. Pujya Gurudev Swami Chinmayanand ji used to say, in a seeker's life, alertness and vigilance is one thing which can never be given up. Never be given up till one realizes. Because you will never know when something enters the mind and your path completely starts to sway out, or you starts to go into a different rail altogether. Your path has changed and you go into a different rail altogether. That's why for a seeker, it is utmost important that a seeker must be cautious, be alert and vigilant to stop something till this particular point in time. And stop means what? Separate himself or herself from that object. Once it crosses this zero barrier, then please remember, it has gone outside the control of that person to stop after this point. That's why till this point, a seeker has to be thoughtful, mindful, to sit down, introspect, think over it, see the long vision, see the end goal all of where it is going, see the end result of where it's going to take him, and stop at that point in time. Because once it crosses this point, then that seeker definitely would need help. Puja Gurudev, explained in his book, The Holy Gita, very beautifully. He says, from this verse onwards, Lord Krishna explains in 5 noble stanzas the Hindu psychological theory of the fall of man from godhood. This is done only to bring home to Arjuna that he, the mighty armed, must try to conquer all his indriya senses from all sides. Such a man, concludes Supreme Consciousness Bhagavan Krishna, is a man of perfection as conceived in and contemplated upon, and as explained in and glorified by the spiritual books of Hindus. This section also gives to us a clear pattern of the autobiography of all seekers who have, after long periods of practice, come to wreck themselves upon the rocks of failure and disappointment. To a true seeker in Vedanta, no fall is ever possible. Instances of unsuccessful seekers are not few. In all of them, the mistake we notice is that they ultimately fell back to be victims of sense entanglement, and in all those cases we also notice that the fallen ones drank the very dregs of it. There is no halfway house for such victims. A slip for them means their total destruction. That is what Bhagavan is trying to bring here. The ladder of fall is very beautifully described here. The path of destruction for a seeker is so elaborately detailed in these stanzas that, fallen as we are, we shall know how to get back to our pristine glory and inward perfection. We'll see the remaining part of what Gurudev mentioned, and as we move along, let's go back to the detailed meaning of it. So what is that a seeker must do? The first thing a seeker must do in terms of introspection, I should tell you where introspection, in which angle that introspection is also needed to be done. I told you the 2 points. The first is that this object, by gaining or coming into my life, is going to add beauty to my life. That's the first point of introspection. The seeker must introspect that is this really true, that once this object comes and my life is going to become beautiful? That's the first point of introspection for a seeker. That go deeper into that thing, that how this object is going to add beauty to me. I told you in management also this thing is there. Sometimes it is better to ask a couple of times to us itself, how? If this is going to add beauty to my life, how? When you dwell into how, and that when it comes out with an answer, go further with another how to it. After 2-3 of attempts to ask how, you will understand what you thought was not correct. Sometimes to gain even answer to those hows, you may need support also to know more about it. Are you really sure this is going to add beauty to my life? And somebody has to sit down and think. That is why our scriptures, or Vedanta especially, only pushes us to start using our intellect in the correct direction, to think the way I have understood it, is it really correct? So first assessment which we need to do, first introspection we need to do, is of what? The Shobhanadhyas, or that the thing which I have associated with it, that this thing is object, once it comes to my life, is going to add beauty to my life. First level of introspection need to be done at that level. The second level of introspection is that, okay, you may think that it may add beauty to my life, but are you really sure it is going to give happiness to me? Then if yes, it is going to give happiness, for how long? Ask that how again. The moment you ask these how, you will realize that the moment you start to peel down into these subtler levels of knowing, is it really the correct way of understanding or not, you will know, that once you reach deeper into that introspection, you will know actually the way you thought was not correct. You will start to see a clear picture about that object. That is why it is important to introspect, to actually investigate into that thing, that what I've understood, is that really correct? And then the third level I told you, are you sure once this object comes into my life, I'm going to be peaceful? If yes, peaceful for how long? How long is this object going to give peace? Are you sure this is going to give peace to me? Or is it going to add more responsibility to my life, that I have to maintain it also after that? It is not that object come, I'm just giving an example of object only first. If object comes into my life, it's not that object will be maintained on its own. It will ask my hard work to maintain it also. Any good thing you see, any good object you see in this life, you will see it asks your hard work to support it. Then only it will be maintained, right? Then you will understand that, once you start introspecting into these things, you will understand that actually what I thought was not the correct way of understanding. It was only my ignorance, because of which I understood. When you ask these questions, are you sure this is going to really give me happiness? Bhagwan Krishna himself in the 5th chapter brings out, yehi samsparshaja bhogaha dukkha yonaya evate. You will realize all objects, once we peel down subtler to understand that how is going to translate into my life, you will realize all of them become a cause of our sorrow only later on. We are creating causes of our sorrow. And that's why, if you think that you're going to gain peace by gaining it, actually that is only to, this thinking is only going to trap you forever. A human or a man is a man only if that person or human being is able to see the result from his level of understanding, with the correct level of understanding. Only when and a person is able to see the long drawn result of something correctly, that is what will make you qualified to become a human being actually. How do you think like that? What is going to happen once I do this work? What is the result which is going to come in front of me? a, Correct, a man of wisdom is who is able to picturize the result, at how it's going to translate once the effort is over. Once that person is going able to translate how this is going to translate back, once this is achieved in my life, that is going to be called as a correct human being. That is how a human being is supposed to be. When a person is able to see in front of his intellect, like, what is this result going to give me, how is this going to translate into my life, if when I move forward and achieve this. And more intellectual a person is more clearer picture that person will be able to see, once is able to think over how this is going to translate. And the biggest thing is that intellectual proof, one, you are intellectual or not, how is it proved? That you are able to see into the depth of things, you are able to see into the depth of how this is going to translate. One of the examples I'll give you is that I told you many times, I think I quoted this point many times before also. Once you pick up the newspaper these days, many you know wrong kind of incidents which you read, you feel pity about that, at how it has been committed. Why? Because you will see all of them has not been thought after at all. They all seem to be animalistic instinct to actually run after that. If somebody is able to step back and think that once I do this, what is going to happen, then that person will realize that actually, if I would have thought it correctly, I don't think I would have committed it also. See, man is supposed to be a thoughtful being. Man is not supposed to be only an instinctive being. Instinctive beings are actually called animals. Animals live on instincts. Animals doesn't have thinking process. So many incidents which, when you read, many wrong kind of incidents, many what do you call that, pitiful incidents, when you read, you realize that, alas, this person has fallen far below the animalistic tendency also to do that in a human body. That is the thing which we, that is the lack of thinking what I'm talking about. A human and becomes a human only when is able to use this faculty called intellect to not only do creative things in life, but also to think before acting that how this is going to translate into. There are many examples I can pick up, but then the thing is that the discussion and will go into so much that I don't think I'll be able to cover the topic also. You see, I'm already taking 2-3 episodes to cover these verses. So an intellectual person is not the one who's is not only able to see result up to a particular point in time for few years only, but a real intellectual man or person, or a person of wisdom, a man of wisdom is the one who is able to see, not only for this life what this is going to give me, but also able to think that how this is going to translate once I leave this body also. See, I'll tell you one thing very honestly, okay? All the crimes which are committed in the world today, we see that some get punished, some get escape the thing also. Okay, let me just give you one part of it from a scriptural understanding only. Whatever, how beautifully your scriptures explain. See, the amount of punishment one gets for the crime done here is only a portion of the punishment that person is bound to get. There is a bigger portion of that punishment which is waiting after this. That is what I'm trying to tell, that an intellectual person or a man of wisdom is who can not only see the result of the action in this life, but also able to see the result of this action which this person is going to plan, and from how it is going to translate after life also. I tell you, karma phala is a long journey. Karma phala means the fruit of action is a long journey. All the actions done in this life, we don't get the result of all of them in this life. There are many stored for afterlives to bear. That is what the concept of how the Sanatan Dharma explains so beautifully. There are three kind of karma phalas, or the fruit of action: Sanchit, Prarabdh, and Agami. Sanchit means all those which are yet to bear fruit, all the actions which I've done in this life also, in the past lives also, which are yet to bear fruit to me, they are yet to bear result for me. Sanchit is that. Prarabdha is those, all the actions which I have done till now, most of it from the previous life and some from this life, which have already started giving me fruit. That is Prarabdha. Agami is those, I may have many lives to go, right? Considering in what my karma phala repository or the account is all about, and my vasanas is all about. So agami are those actions which are I'm going to commit as I move along in this life also, the remaining part of this life and the coming life, they all come into agami. So these are how the fruit of actions are divided in Sanatan Dharma. So a man of wisdom is not only able to see the result from this, it's for a year, 2 year, 5 year, it's not, that's not it. That man of wisdom is able to who foresee correctly that if I continue doing this action, what is going to be my state, how which kind of a life I'm going to get at going forward once this body is dropped. After this life, how my life is going to be. A man of wisdom is able to see that also. A man of wisdom is able to understand also. An intellectual person is able to understand also, oh, in this life, what are the actions which I must do? What are the actions which I should do, so that going forward, after this life also, I'm able to get a body of my choice. I'm able to get a life of my choice. I'm able to become into something which I always wanted. One portion is that many of, I would not use the word many, but some should say some of us may feel that I wanted to become that, I wanted to become that, but I was not able to become in this life. But you have an option. You can work towards this thing. So what if you're not able to achieve in this life? At least work towards that. At least the next life is better. In this life I did not or get what I wanted, so I'll spoil this life and wreck my life. I'm sorry, that's not the correct approach as per our Sanatan Dharma. See, I remember one thing, what you I told you, when I spoke about karmanye vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, I brought up this particular point, that what you get at in this life is actually the result of your past lives or the past action. But what you get you cannot change, but you still have a choice that you can cultivate what you want to get in this life if you have not got it, or cultivate something which you desire but you can't get in this particular life. You have that choice. You also have another choice, which is the worst side of it, that you can also, I did not get in this life, I can ensure that I get those things I wanted in this life, I ensure that I don't get in any life, so to say. That also is possible. I told you, on the vertical growth path, both the things are available to man. Vertical path, a man can grow also. A vertical path, man can fall also. Let me be upfront in telling it to you, and I'm telling you to you that, what Sanatan Dharma is teaching about in terms of what Bhagavad Gita is talking about is applicable to the entire mankind, irrespective of caste, creed, and religion. This is what the law of this whole creation is about. And irrespective of how you have understood, just because you don't know the law, that doesn't mean that you are above law. That doesn't mean the law doesn't and is not applicable to you. If you know it, well and good, you can control your actions so that you are able to create better results for you. If you continue to stand up and say that I don't know, and it is not going to, good luck to you. If that is what your thinking is, if you continue to say that I don't know about it, so it is not going to be applicable to me, then I would say good luck to you. That's not how the creation works. One creation cannot have many laws to run about. One creation will have one law only, and all of us are classified as human beings, which is our first way to identify. Then there are animals, there are plants, there are birds, there are further classifications like that. But for all human beings, one law is applicable. For all animals and birds, one law is applicable. That is how the law of creation works. One creation cannot have different laws for different kind of caste, creed, and religion. It doesn't work like that. That is our misunderstanding, our foolishness to think about. So a man of wisdom is able to clearly see what is the concept which life is trying to teach about. How can I work towards gaining what I want in life? How can I work towards growing in life, not falling back at all? I'll bring up one example of animals here. You know, these law of karmas are different for our animals. Animals are bhog yoni. I explained it pretty elaborately when I spoke about karmanye vadikaraste, that verse also that I explained there. So in Sanskrit, the word is called pashu. The word, the way it is coined is pashyati iti pashu. So pashu means animal. Who is an animal? Well, animal is that who can only see what is in front of it, does not have the faculty of thinking to see long drawn result. An animal cannot do. That is why what animal sees, it acts according to it. That is why you will see, all acts of animals are actually instinctive. It's not well thought after. I'm giving you one example for you to bring out. Puji Guruji Swami Subodhananji used to bring it out so beautifully that, if an animal decides not to eat for one particular day, or skip a day's meal or a day's food, it's not that it is a well thought after action. It's not that it decided that I've heard a lot about fasting and all, let me also try. No, it's not like that. It's not a fasting for that animal. It is actually instinctive. Why that animal feels is the what is the desire of that animal? That it is something called jijivisha. Jijivisha means that it has got a desire to continue its life. That is a common desire to live, right? To who ensure that the continuity of life is maintained. That is why it starts to understand that if I don't eat today, or if I don't eat for one day, it is going to save me from falling sick. Because of that, an animal sometimes avoid food. It is not a fasting for that. It's not a well thought after action. It's instinctive. This kind of an action is automatic in an animal, and there is no thinking behind and such kind of an action at all. Or just like that, I'm going to give you another example for you to see. The our eyelids, if there is a indication that some dust falls, the eyelid automatically tries to close. Why? It tries to protect itself. It is not something that it is, no, I'll think over it, that dust is coming. It's not a thought after action, it's an instinctive action. That is why we need to understand animals cannot see or think of the result. They always will act according to the instinct, the way they have been designed and they have been programmed. I told you animals are pre-programmed. It's a bhog yoni, means it is for exhaustion of karma phala only. It is a yoni, by the way. So here, what we're trying to say is that in our personal life, in the life of an organization, in the life of a nation also, a man has got a capability to see far how these actions are going to translate. Even our leaders in the country we talk about, the political leaders we speak about, there are different kind of leaders we see in life. There are some who are forget about seeing the long range vision. They don't even know what they are doing. There are leaders like that also who are there in the creation, who are available, who are digging their own graves also, I'll say that way. There are some leaders who are able to define an action, design an action by seeing the long term result. They are able to think in a direction what is going to churn out better for the country, what is going to be positive on a long run. They don't think of immediate gain. Immediate gain, to anybody can think. Immediate gain is not the only gain we think about. Just think, people who invest money, there are different kind of investors of money. Some people are thinking of immediate gain also. Okay, there are some who think of long term gain, that how this is going to translate 5 years down the line, how this is investment is going to translate once I retire, how this is going to translate in the eventuality if I lose life, how will my family be supported. That is what is called long range thinking. Man has got the capability that a man can see as far as possible, as far as possible. And what is more farther than the point that a man can think of the future lives also, that how these actions are going to translate in the further lives. Why do you think when I spoke about fulfilling one's duty, I said duty is fulfilling our duty is our route for salvation. Let me use that way. Salvation means it is definitely a way to exhaust my karma phala and also exhaust my vasanas. That is why Bhagwan Krishna laid so much emphasis that if everyone in this creation and focuses on their duty and does their duty, trust me, no organization, no political leaders are required to make this world a beautiful place to live. The world will automatically become a beautiful place to live if all of us stand up to do our own respective duties correctly, with our capability, to the best possible, with the best possible effort. But on the other hand, if there is no emphasis on duty, nobody wants to do their duty, want to run away from their duty, and only focuses on rights, that I should get this right, I should get that right, I should get this, then I'm sorry, this world is going to be very chaotic to live the way it is today. Rights will come to you, but you focus on duty. That's why I said Sanatan Dharma is very clear. We are very clear that all human beings must be focused on their duty. If everyone does their duty, trust me, your rights, no, you don't have to fight for your rights, it will automatically come. But yes, you have to make an effort first. I tell you one thing very honestly, it is said that to get, you have to give first. We all need to train ourselves in that. Give first to get. We need to understand this is how the creation works. If everyone gives, everyone will get. For sure they will. So we need to focus on what is in our hand rather than focusing on what I should gain from somebody else. Somebody else is forced to give you if you do what you're supposed to do. That is why a man has got this ability, has got this capability, that can see the result very, very long drawn. Such people are called visionaries, who can see long range vision, who can do long term planning for themselves also. Those who can do for themselves, they can definitely do for others also. One who is equipped with this kind of an intellect, this kind of a vision, and once one who is equipped with such thing, that is the one who can do introspection also correctly. Our Vedas say it very clearly that at if you see or introspect things coming in your life clearly with the correct vision, trust me, you will definitely gain dispassion. Dispassion will automatically come. See, when I use the word dispassion, dispassion has got its own level of gravities, by the way. I'm not talking about the dispassion that you leave everything and go. There are many people, since I'm running this WhatsApp group also, there are people, because the WhatsApp group is full, so the waiting list is very long now for the people who are waiting to enter. Only once somebody leaves, or inadvertently, or leaves the group, then only I can let people in. So the waiting list is really long. But those who have been waiting in the list, they do contact me separately. I'm pretty shocked to hear certain things from people that they started reading Bhagavad Gita, but their family is saying that their family is worried that they may leave everything and go. I don't know where they got these kind of misconceptions. First, they themselves don't know anything, they don't even seek advice also, and with their limited understanding, they try to control their kids into wrong path also. So incorrect it is. Who said that Bhagavad Gita is telling you to take sannyas? It's never said there. Bhagavad Gita is actually trying to give you the right way of living. It is teaching you the art of living. It is teaching you the correct way of living. Our education system is not teaching us that. Our education system is pushing us into competition to become this, become that, and all those things. But they are not even teaching us how to become human being, which is our basic thing. We are human first, then only we can become others. Who is teaching you to become a correct human being? If somebody would have done that, I don't think the problems we see in the world would be there. The correct way of living is being taught by Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is not telling you who that leave home and go. Nobody says that. That is not something which you can do also. It is not something which we can do. It will come automatically when we are ready, and that readiness sometimes takes many lives. Who said that by reading Bhagavad Gita you will leave everything and go? I think people, it's high time people need to be corrected with these kind of misconceptions. I personally feel these kind of thoughts are planted by those people who are against Sanatan Dharma, who doesn't want our scriptures to be taught, who are anti Sanatan Dharma, so to say. I feel that these kind of thoughts are planted by them. See, our Upanishad says so clearly that when I said that verse, Pariksha Lokan Karmachitan Brahmanan, it says Nirvedam Ayat. If we try to Pariksha Lokan, if we try to assess this world, its objects, its things, what it comes to us as the kind of attitudes and other things in this creation, trust me, if you see it correctly, Ved Bhagwan says Nirvedam Ayat. You are definitely going to gain dispassion living here itself. Bhagwan Krishna himself says, is in the 18th chapter or 48th verse, Sarva Rambhahi Doshena Dhume na Agnirivavrita. He says, there is no action which is not like the smoke arising from the fire. Means there is no action in this world which is free of faults, or which is completely free from any kind of himsa, any kind of infliction on others. It's there is, you know, the thing is, I can say it here and go, but sometimes when I have any session and personally with you in any one of the question answers and all, I'll pick up this point, that how every action, Bhagwan says, Sarvarambha hi doshena dhumena agnirivavrataha. He says that every action has got some kind of fault in it, has got some kind of infliction on somebody. I'll explain you in there. I'm not picking up here because I have to explain the verse also completely. So Bhagwan says, at the level of dhyayatah, at the level of thinking, a seeker has to be alert and vigilant. And if this thought, if this thinking which is there, that something is going to add beauty to his life, this object is going to add beauty to the life, is going to beautify the life, or this object is going to give happiness in life, if that kind of thought is broken by the introspection, that I'm going to get peace once I gain this object, once if anything is done to break this kind of thought process, which is the actual situation also, and is able to see clearly what exactly is going to happen, what is the correct way of seeing it, then, and remember, the what do you call that, the force of sangha, the what do you call that, the pressure of sangha, the force of sangha, the force of association starts to cut off or starts to loosen up. That force starts to loosen up. You know, even if the association is not completely disconnected, but trust me, its effect will definitely reduce for sure. So that's why the first point is what, or where, you know, where there is an, when the dhyayata, the thinking starts to convert into association, at that point we have to tackle in such a way that the force of association starts to reduce, or it starts to loosen up in such a way that the association doesn't fasten up in its correct manner, the way it is supposed to happen. The first point will be at the level of thinking. The first point will be at the level of thinking it correctly in the correct fashion with the correct kind of inputs and details, so that the association itself doesn't happen. At the level of association also it doesn't happen. Then the second point will be the at when the association starts to happen, or at the thinking level I could not do it, when the association starts to happen, at that time I need to at least introspect before the association fastens up that I must be able to control it. The second level where we can exercise control is at the level of when we start getting associated, when the sangha starts to develop in us, when the association starts to develop in us. Pujya Swami Sharananandji used to say that our thinking should be in such a way that we should stop cooperating with things which we do not need to do in our life. We should start cooperating with such things where we don't see long range results in life. Rather, we should start to or definitely move away from those things. We should definitely stop cooperating with something in completion. Don't cooperate with them, and stop cooperating completely with them. And when any kind of desire, when any kind of thing arises in our life, at that time, before accepting it, before accepting it means that before it converts into action, you accept that thought first. Before accepting it, at that level you must exercise this thing, that stop accepting it without careful thinking. And when you stop accepting it without careful thinking, and then you're forced to actually carefully think over that thing. So once you carefully think over that thing, then you will realize that your desire to get this also doesn't become strong. The kind amount of pressure that thing puts on us also reduces. Like, I'm giving you an example there. Just as, for example, a small child in one's home, actually is crying out completely, that I want some object, or is crying for a particular object, and really crying loud for that object. and is trying to force us to buy that object for that kid. And you will see that it's actually trying to who put pressure on the parents to buy it, that I definitely want it. It actually, he tries to create a loud noise in the home that I want that particular object. The kid is adamant about some object, like that I want that object and definitely want it, and starts to cry for that object, and we as parents know that that object is not good for that kid at all. Then what do? Even though the kid is adamant about it, and is definitely trying to create problem in the whole home with that thing, is trying to disturb the environment of the home with with its adamancy of trying to get that object, right? And we know that our object is not good, so irrespective of how much adamant that kid is, what we do, we will not buy that object for that kid. After some time we will see the kid may cry and then go for sleep, and sometime later the kid will understand that it is not going to come to it. So in the same way, that's how, why I gave the example of a kid. Our mind also works like that. Our mind also behaves like a kid. Once the desire is stuck in the mind, it wants it. It will create restlessness in us to try to chase for that object. And what should a seeker do? Seeker should quietly bear that restlessness. And that is what is the actual definition of this word in Vedanta, called titiksha. Titiksha means forbearance, actually. The literal meaning of titiksha, what we understand is that forbearing things, the pinpricks of life and all those things we talk about. But actually, at the intellectual level, titiksha is this, what or how we need, sadhak needs to understand. The external titiksha or forbearance is actually to bear the pair of opposites in life, which is shita, ushna, sukha, dukkha and all. But the internal way of seeing titiksha or forbearance is trying to quietly forbear the kind of restlessness of mind. For doing sadhana, uh, for doing the sadhana, one should actually quietly forbear the kind of restlessness mind creates about certain objects. That is why Bhagwan, and in he says, it is said in the our Upanishad also, Vijnana Sarathi. Vijnana Sarathi means oh, our actual one to anchor our life should be intellect filled with wisdom, completely filled with wisdom. That is what would actually anchor our life into actions, and how to lead life correctly. So that is one who should have the reins of our life. If because usually we see mind always sways or takes the side of senses. And you will notice, this you can notice with you also, by taking up the side of senses, or standing on the side of senses, or shaking hands with the senses, mind actually creates the environment of restlessness in us. And if and in our intellect is strong, when I explained the BMI chart, I spoke about strengthening the intellect. If our intellect is strong and has seen it correctly, that going with the mind, even though it is giving side of the senses, is definitely like inviting problems in life, and it starts to not cooperate with the mind, completely move away from cooperating with the mind, doesn't cooperate with mind at all. Well, you will see mind will create restlessness in that person. And and restlessness will have to be borne by that person, will have to be forborne by this person. And but irrespective of whatever restlessness come, I will sleep over that thing, but I will not go with the mind. That is what is called actual penance or tapasya, and that is the correct definition of titiksha. In case it happens this way, please remember, definitely gain is sure for this particular person. the kind of force with which the mind came up in the first instance. And when mind comes now, it is like a tornado actually. I was trying to think of that example, it just came struck my mind now. When the mind comes up with some things, trust me, it is like a tornado, it will consume you in. It comes with that much force. I'm not exactly tornado, for some it may be tornado, but I'm just telling you, it will consume you, it will create so much upsetness in your entire internal system that will be very difficult for you to manage. That is why I tell you, training the intellect to overpower mind is very, very important. We must have our intellect which is strong enough to control the mind in its way. So that kind of an intellect is definitely needed to be carved out by us. As you know, the way mind comes up, the kind of pressure which mind puts on our internal system, that it will initially come with a too much strong force for us to manage. But if you are able to manage that particular first moment, that particular first instance when the mind comes up with that pressure, if you are able to handle that immediate, that kind of pressure which comes to us from the mind, then please remember, and if at that time we are able to manage in such a way that we completely do not cooperate with mind at that point in time, then remember, the next moment, that pressure of the mind, the kind of pressure the mind was putting up, the effect reduces. So that is why it is said at that point control is possible. All the kind of tapasvis we have seen, all the kind of people who have been doing penance, we see they have all been successful in controlling at these 2 points itself. If they are able to, that is why you will see the kind of results they gain, because they are able to exercise control at these 2 points. The kind of results they gain is amazing to talk about. So what happens is, if we are able to exercise this kind of a control, the result which comes to us is that the kind of beautification, that kind of thought that this thing is going to add beauty to my life and this thing is going to give me happiness, which was arising out of our ignorance, will suddenly wash away, just as fog. Winters are here already, so especially the north of India, many states sees fog during this time. So in the fog, driving becomes very difficult because you can hardly see anything. But it's not that the fog is going to remain the whole day. Towards the middle of the day, or when the sunlight is high and the heat of the sun comes, the fog also goes away. And once the fog goes away, the vision of the route and road and everything is very clear. In the same way, these kind of things also, it's like a fog. It will definitely clear away, but we have to be patient enough with that. We should not be impatient and jump into different kind of actions at the spur of the moment. We should not act at all. Self control is actually required in every walk of life, whether it is social life also, and spiritual life, so definitely. Actually, if you see, a well balanced behavior or act is what is called self control. Self control means what? A well balanced, well thought after, controlled kind of action and behavior is what is called actually is self control. And those kind of control is required, a controlled behavior, a controlled way of interacting with the in the world is required, but at the level of the living beings also, at the level of non living beings also. Means at every sense level, well, you know at every sense level action, at every action of every sense, hence control is definitely required. And control is possible only when a person is able to who see the end result of that person's action. And such a person who can see the end result of his or her own action, definitely is going to be successful in any field that person works in. In the field of spirituality, he, through these verses, Bhagwan is trying to say that up to these two levels, which is dhyayatah and sangha, one must work towards exercising control. So a man must train himself or herself to see, result to a far level, or to see the end result of every action. And when a person is able to see only, then only that person can add beauty to his or her action. And that only when the person is able to see that the result of this action is not going to be good, then only that person will be able to control himself or herself from doing that particular action. And our scripture says that, but only when a person is able to see that this thing is not going to give good result, or this thing is going to give good result, then only that person will be able to plan or lead a life with correct kind of actions and behavior. Just by saying this, that I don't know, oh, that's not, or that's not, or really intelligence, so to say. You just because you don't know doesn't mean that the result is not applicable to you. This is a very, very popular verse, but the actual meaning of this verse, these 262 and 63 verse, is not as simple as we feel. In the womb of this particular verse, there is so much to think about, so much to actually or deep dive into to understand this verse correctly. Now from the second point, Bhagwan says, let's move on from the Sangha into the further parts which Bhagwan says, is that if I'm able to control myself till this point, I'm able to stop from the remaining part of the fall. Okay, but if I'm not able to control here, then Bhagwan talks about what is going to happen to such a person as he moves along without exercising control up to this particular point. There is another aspect of this Sangha which I'm tempted to actually bring out, but I don't know, should I go into that much detail or not? Let me see if I can touch some portion of it for you to understand. There are some other aspects of association also, the Sangha, which Bhagwan talks about, which we must know. As I just mentioned to you, that once mind comes and joins the senses, gangs up with the senses to force us to get into action into a particular field. And if the intellect has got power to decide not to cooperate, or runs a non-cooperation movement with the mind and along with the senses, it doesn't cooperate with them to continuously to turn it into action, because if intellect is strong, mind cannot convert things into action without the intellect's permission. That is what I was spoke about when I spoke about in the BMI chart also. So the one aspect which I said is that definitely there will be some amount of restlessness which mind will we will see, one person will see in his antakarna, and one must patiently move through it patiently forbear it, which I said in the titiksha part. And we see that sometimes we have to run a non-cooperation movement with the mind. On that point, I would say one thing which I briefly touched in the last session, but I'm trying to bring out now. The modern scientists say that they have objection to this particular point of non-cooperation cooperation movement with the mind. They say that if we, they use this word called suppression of mind. Okay, now I want to bring out why, because I'm only touching the point in a brief. Now I'm not going in too much detail on this, but I want you to understand one point. The modern scientists say that if one suppresses mind, okay, suppresses mind, one suppresses mind, they translate this non-cooperation as suppression of mind. That's the reason I'm bringing out that particular portion. They say if one suppresses mind by not fulfilling what it desires, then that becomes one of the cause for many kind of mental illnesses. manasik rogon, they can give birth to many kind of mental illnesses like depression, many other things they speak about in terms of mental illnesses. Okay, and they don't support such kind of suppression of mind. But what I want to bring out is, then do you think that Bhagwan will tell you something of that sort which is going to create a reason for mental illnesses in you? I'm sorry, that's not the correct way of understanding. What modern scientists are talking about suppression, that suppression is not what spiritual sciences or Bhagwan is talking about here. Bhagwan is talking about self control, not suppression. Suppression happens, and that suppression can happen because of many reasons. First, you should know that sometimes we suppress our desires because we may not have the capability to gain them. We may not have the capability to get them. We may not have enough bandwidth to get them. We may not have enough resources to go after them. That can be called as suppression. But remember, there it is not a well thought after thing. But what Bhagwan says in this particular verse is self-control, not suppression. Bhagwan is not telling you to suppress. Remember, I'm wanting to make it very clear here, because how the modern scientists talk about that if you suppress things, they say that don't go by this verse, don't ever suppress your mind, because suppression of mind creates its reason for many kind of mental illnesses which arise in you, because you are trying to suppress mind from what it desires. Every time suppression of mind does that. That is right. If you suppress the mind every time, that happens. I'm not saying no to it, but that is not what Bhagwan is saying here. The difference between self control and suppression is, self control is well thought after. It is by giving correct way of thinking to the mind first. It is by showing mind the result of what it's going, why the self control is exercised. It's not suppression of mind. It's not non cooperation here doesn't mean suppressing mind. Remember, in the non cooperation, intellect is with you, but in suppression, intellectual thing is not there. In suppression is not intellectual. Suppression is forceful, whereas self-control is intellectual. You need to have enough data first. I told you, you need to have a vision of the end result first to actually control the mind. Here, self-control is not equal to suppression. Self-control does not mean suppression. And trust me, self-control has got another thing to it. When you suppress the mind, what happens is, I should tell you the result of suppression also. When the thing is said, what happens when you suppress the mind? The moment you suppress the mind, the first thing is that there will be something called irritation within you. I'm talking about, you will feel irritated, and that irritation will also may also impact your sleep, right? And then it will keep you disturbed during the day. It has impacted your sleep. You could not rest well. It will convert into disturbance during the day. That disturbance will not let you be at your performance level. That disturbance, slowly, gradually, your mind will brood over them and will create reasons for depression, which is what we see today. Okay? But self-control, now I should bring out self-control here to make you understand why I brought it up here. Because modern sciences are against these verses, saying that modern scientists are against these verses, saying that Bhagwan is talking about suppression and suppression is not right. Yes, suppression is not right, I agree with you. But what happens with self-control, you must know that also. The moment you do self-control, that means what mind wants you to do, or mind wants to get done from you, you are not going to do that, right? And your intellect doesn't want to do that. And if the intellect wins in not letting the mind do what it wants, but not forcefully out of competition with each other, not like that, it's not a war. Remember, there is no war with the mind here. That is what suppression is. Suppression is a war with the mind. But in self control, it's not a war with the mind. But yes, by slowly, gradually making mind understand, jointly it wins over the situation. And what happens then? The feeling of winning in this whole thing, that feeling is going to come in mind. Why? Because mind is the feeler. There will be an internal satisfaction. My God, mind and senses wanted to get it done, but I could explain them correctly that why I should not do it, and jointly we won. It's not that intellect says I won and mind lost. That's not the thing here. And that there is an inner feeling of joy that, my God, what a win. And trust me, those who have done self control, they will know the taste of that win is really blissful. Of winning over along with the mind is really blissful. And in that whole effort, who won? Who won? I won. I, as in the whole unit, won. Who lost? The restlessness, or the, what do you call that, slippery nature of the mind lost. Right? The attachment to the object lost. The vasana lost. And the what mind gained, I'll tell you, mind got this feeling that I also have this capability to control. I have this capability to say no to something. Puja Maharaj Sri Swami Sharananand ji used to say, that which is not supposed to happen, and a desire for such things should does not arise in me, and that which is supposed to happen automatically happens. That is what is the correct definition of freedom. In a person in whom that which should not happen, a desire of such things never arises, and those things which are supposed to happen or which is supposed to be done by that person automatically keeps on happening without too much of effort. Trust me, that person can actually be called as experiencing freedom. That is where somebody, that is where we can say his or her capability is proven. But to prove such capability, many situations come in their life, and those situations which should not happen also come. And but what happens, they don't let their mind or intellect function into those arenas, and those things which come, and there are sometimes, mind plays something, but it ends up doing it. Trust me, that is what is actually called sadhana. The feeling of winning over a situation is the actual thing, the flag of self control. And that is the actual property of self control. That can only happen and when within us our intellectual capability is such that we are able to see clearly what is good for me and what is going to prove bad for me. When that vision is there, or the capability of vision, seeing things correctly is there in the intellect, then only such kind of self control all can happen. When and the intellect is able to see clearly that what I'm going to say, is it going to benefit someone or not, and I'm able to choose not to do or do some things like that. That is when the actual self control is supposed to be there. That is what the actual capability of self control can be seen as. And when a person is able to see that the kind of behavior I am developing is not going to be good for me in a long run, is going to make me be alone in life, and is going to make me far away from people, and I'm able to correct that kind of behavior, that is what you can, and say that intellect is working correctly. This person is able to see very clearly and with firmness that this is what is correct, that is what, and then is able to make a firm decision that I will go only this way, I will not go to these, get swayed to other paths at all. That is what is called actual intellectual capability of a man of wisdom, of a man whose intellect is working correctly. And this kind of a feeling, trust me, does not give you the feeling of suppression at all. It does not give you that feeling at all. Suppression is when, at the intellectual level, the understanding is not there. There is no intellectual decision to not go after them, but you suppress because of issues with capability, issues with resources, and other things. That is when you can actually call that action as suppression. Self control is when we are able to see that this is not going to be good for us, it is not going to gain in things in my life at all. That is when actually self control can happen. For self control, the participation of intellect is a must, along with memory. I'm saying intellect doesn't function without memory, by the way. I'm going to come to that point when I come about smriti bhramshat buddhi nasha. I'm going to come at that, and when Bhagavan says smriti vibhrama, I'll explain you at that particular point. So to understand clearly, suppression is when at the intellectual level there is no decision, that intellect is not able to decide that by doing this it is not or going to give me good result. When such kind of a decision is not being made by an intellect, that is when suppression happens. At the intellectual level, well, there is some kind of an approval, well, there is some kind of oh, what do you call that, some kind of cooperation at the intellectual level, that at some kind of acceptance at the intellectual level, that by doing this I'm definitely going to gain in happiness, I'm going to gain peace, and in this, by doing this, there is no worse kind of a result is going to come to me. At that time, when we are not able to do something, that is when the suppression happens. When at the intellectual level, this kind of an acceptance is there, that this is running after this thing or associating with this is going to give me happiness, is going to beautify my life, and because of some situations, if I'm not able to do that thing, that is when we actually call it as suppression. Maybe because because of the social status, or because of the social needs, because of my family stature, because of my income level, there are many reasons of such kind of suppressions, many kind of social reasons also which is there. But remember, in those suppression, the intellectual approval is there that this is going to give me happiness, this is going to add beauty to my life, but I don't end up doing it. That is when the suppression happens. But because intellect wants to actually he enjoy that particular thing, but is not able to do it because of reasons outside its control, at that time, definitely yes, frustration, depression, all those things can happen. But remember one thing, in scriptures are not talking about suppression at all. Suppression is not something which scripture is advising. They are saying intellectually understand first. That is why thinking has to happen first, introspect first, convince. Intellect should have a convincing answer of why it is not cooperating with mind. It's not a haphazard thing at all. It is not by chance I will not cooperate, pick and choose not to cooperate. No, intellect has good enough reasons not to cooperate with mind. When the reasons are there, intellect is convinced that it is not going to be good for me, and remember, where convincing mind also becomes easy, then that is not actually suppression, that is called self control. And remember, self control is the utmost important thing for a spiritual seeker, uh, because for a spiritual seeker, his or her path is different. That much you should understand about the difference between the suppression and self control. So what the objective scientists speak about, or the modern scientists speak about in terms of suppression, that is completely different than self control. And those modern excuse me, modern scientists actually do not understand the side of spiritual sciences completely, or this what subjective scientists are about, speaking about. They don't understand. That is why they speak such things that, without understanding completely what subjective scientists are talking about in terms of self control. Spiritual sciences is very clear. They say if you give intellectual approval to something, and you have already developed a desire to gain that thing, then, and do good action, correct action, honest action to gain it. Why go, with the different path, or dishonest path? Don't go that path. Then honestly approach that thing and gain it. And trust me, honestly, if you work towards it, then why will your desire not be fulfilled? And if your desire is very, very strong, please remember, and you work honestly towards it, trust me, I'm telling you, if it doesn't get fulfilled in this life, it is definitely surely going to get fulfilled in the next life. So what is your worry? The example I bring out is from Mahabharata. You remember the Amba Ambalika story of Mahabharat, where Bhishma Pitama took them to be married to the Hastinapur, or Dhritarashtra and Pandu, who, and all those things at that time. And when the Amba Ambalika story came up at that time, please remember that Amba had gone back, because she said that, "Oh, I'm already in love with somebody else, and I want to go back to that." But that person did not accept. So she felt that her life was ruined by Bhishma Pitama, and she wanted to actually be the cause of killing Bhishma Pitama. And Amba did not have that much of power to do it, but she worked towards it. She did penance for it, and she became one of the reason to kill. She became the reason to kill Bhishma Pitama. If that can happen, then which desire of your, if it's strong, cannot happen? But I'm just giving you that example. Why? Don't take it that wrong desire. I'm bringing out for that particular reason. But the why scriptures talk about this thing, that desire, if it is strong, trust me, it will work out. But what result it is going to give you depend on whether it is good or bad. So you must think correctly about that. Our scriptures are very clear, that if you have a strong sankalpa, strong desire for something, trust me, your inner equipment will definitely chase after them and will definitely fulfill them in some point in time. And even if it's not able to fulfill in this life, don't need to worry, it will definitely get fulfilled in some life. But if that is the case, then why run after desire? Why can't we have a desire to get God? I'm talking about desire. I gave you that example because that came from Mahabharata, but not to bring out the thing. The thing is that if somebody work towards things, it can work out, irrespective of how difficult it is. I wanted to just bring out that side. But I'm saying, if you really want to have a desire, why not have a desire to gain God? Work towards it. So what, at which life it gets fulfilled, but it will surely get fulfilled, and we can, all of us can get it. Trust me, I'm telling you, all of us can get it. It is something which is achievable by all of us, provided you work towards it. But that's why Bhagwan says, is talks so much about self control. In both these levels of dhyayata and sangha, a control is possible. Well, even when we think of the object, and when the association starts to build up also, at that point also, oh, definitely is self control can be exercised. But once these points have crossed, I spoke to you that when the zero barrier is crossed, at that time, and control becomes a little difficult. What that is what Bhagwan is trying to tell about in the further part of this particular verse actually. We must know that man is a being where intellect is prominent, whereas animals are being where body is prominent. So the actual glory of a man is what? That a man is a human being. The correct human being is one who can think. We must all use this is faculty called thinking. That is what separates us from animals actually. So yes, as when desire arises in our mind, it can create temporary restlessness in us. Doesn't matter. We must practice patience. We must be able to forbear them, and with the patience and the forbearance, hence we will be able to win over such things. Definitely, yes, it may take time, but definitely, for sure, or we are going to come out as winners towards it. Puja Gurudev used to say, Puja Gurudev Swami Chinmayanand ji used to say, we must use our intellectual faculty to become intelligent being. Just being human being is not important. Human being is a human being when it is an intelligent being. Intelligence is what is prominent in human being, whereas body is prominent in actually animals. So Puja Gurudev used to say that just see, Mother Ganga, the river Ganges we are talking about. When river Ganges starts flowing from Gomukh, comes to Gangotri, and travel such a long distance of the length and breadth of the country to go and meet it, the ocean in Ganga Sagar in Calcutta, in West Bengal. Also, when Gangaji starts flowing from there, where through the path where she flows, she comes across these small kind of rocks also, small kind of stones also, and big kind of rocks also. Now Gangaji doesn't fight with the big rocks. When it comes to big rocks, she makes a way from them and moves on. Whereas the small stones, she moves over them. In the same way, we should also know where to bend and where to be straight upon, where to move, who to move over, and who to bend down in front of who. That is what is called intelligence in a being. Everywhere we can't just go head on and fight with everyone. It is not required also. Many things we need to intellectually think what is right, and if this right and wrong thing should always keep on in our going on in our head, so that we can decide correctly in life. Moving on, Bhagwan says, Sangat Sanjayate Kama. He says if the zero barrier is crossed, the next step which comes after Sangha, after association, is that at that it will convert into a desire in us. That it is going to convert into a desire means what? It will push us to run or chase after it. As we saw before, or calm or desire is such a thing which we have to fulfill. Once it arises in us, we have to fulfill. Bhagwan Bhashyakar or Bhagwan Shankaracharya ji says in his commentary, Kamaha Sangat Prite Sanjayate Samutpadyate Kamaha. Bhagwan says, Bhagwan translates the word Sangha as Pritehe, that which will create dearness in us. Pritehe. Pritehe means that which it becomes very dear to me, that which becomes very, very close to my heart. And then he says, what is the further vritti, further translation of this dearness? It becomes something called Trishna. Trishna means thirst. And remember, the moment it converts into thirst, if you are thirsty, you don't have any option. You'll have to drink water to quench your thirst, right? Thirst has to be quenched. Means what? Or that once it converts into desire, your mind will put all energy to run after it. It will force you to actually run after it and get it. And what is the loss of quenching the thirst or trishna? That this desire will still give rise to all kind of different thought modifications within me, manovikar, or kind of mental thought modification inside me. Definitely fulfilling desire gives me gain, but the other part of it is that fulfilling desire gives me actually greed. What is the meaning of greed? The greed is what? That which gave me happiness, I would want to enjoy it more. There will be a desire to enjoy it more. And I will want that thing of enjoyment to be with me forever. And then I would want to actually own that thing or keep that thing, collect that thing which gave me happiness. And once the desire is fulfilled, the other thing which comes is that I will get ego, abhiman. What kind of ego comes in us once the desire is fulfilled? The desire, once the desire is fulfilled, the ego, the disastrous ego which comes in us is actually what? Whatever work I take up, I definitely make sure that I succeed. If I touch any work, trust me, success is surely mine. That kind of a thing comes in our mind. And Bhagwan in the 16th chapter also says this. This is actually nothing but an asuri bhav. It's a demonic thought. It's how demons think about asuri bhav. And if the desire is not fulfilled, by God I tell you, the next thing immediately which is going to sprout out is what? Anger, krodha. Bhagwan is saying that at see the journey after desire, what happens, and think over it, that do you think it is right to walk that path? You must think over it. Bhagwan says kamat krodho bijayate. And Bhagwan Bhashyakar writes here, if there is something which creates obstacle in gaining the object of my desire, then that desire itself converts and takes the form of anger. A desireful mind will convert into an angry mind very, very soon. The desireful mind, the result of a desireful mind is conversion into an angry mind very, very soon. If somebody, says that, somebody creates an obstacle in the path of me gaining that particular object, desire, the anger is automatic. If there are many people who boast about this, that don't come in front of me, my anger is too much, and I become, I become very angry with things. That means, the meaning is what? According to the the literal translation of that, according to spirituality, is what? uh, is not something to boast about. If you have too much anger in your intellect and in your mind, that means you have too much desire inside you. Just clearly translate that way. Actually means what? There are so many desires in your intellect and in your mind, in your antakaran, that you have given chances for it to be disturbed every now and then, to sprout out as anger. Now, one more example I'll give you here is, it comes to my mind that there are some people who are perfectionist. Now, if you are perfectionist, it's still okay. It's not good for you that way, because you have already have a lot of reasons to become angry on many things. But the bigger problem which comes with a perfectionist is what? A perfectionist would want that all the people working with that person should also be perfect in their work. Now, man, that is too much of a desire to have. That is too much of a wrong intention to have. Every person is an individual human being, and there is no harm if somebody does some mistakes and learn from it. Everybody cannot be perfect. Just because I am perfect, that everybody should be perfect, I'm sorry, that's not a good desire at all. That's a very, very wrong thing to have. And a perfectionist, most of the perfectionists have reasons, so many reasons build up to actually become angry. They would want that whatever work is done for me should be perfect, but that desire is never going to get fulfilled. Why? Because everybody is not you, and you also, you will see that many times that there are times when we are not able to do things perfectly. So Bhagwan says here very clearly that if you have such things, then you please remember, you have already created a lot of possibilities to become hurt every now and then. If you have strong desire, or the stronger your desire, the stronger will be your anger, if there is any obstruction to that particular work. And Bhagwan says it very clearly, Krodhat bhavati sammoha. Bhagwan says is from anger comes moha. Moha means delusion. Now, Bhagwan Bhashyakar here has written and the meaning of moha as avivekah karya karye vishaya. Ignorance or delusion in terms of what needs to be done and what should not be done, and that kind of a delusion is what Bhashyakar has named as sammoha. That is what is Bhagwan coining as sammoha here. Bhashyakar says is the gravity of this sammoha, uh, and he gives one example which I will explain you in the next with a story from a Purana also, but I'm only telling you now. I'm just picking it up from the 63rd verse, the top Bhashya itself, where Bhashyakar says, Krodhat bhavati sammoha avivekah karya vishaya. After that he says, Kruddho hi sammudha san gurum api akroshati. He says, you see the level of anger of a person. That at an angry, the example which Bhagwan Bhashyakar gives here is Kruddho hi sammudo san gurum api akroshati. This man is so much deluded in anger and is so much covered with delusion that this person starts to become angry with his own guru. He starts to misbehave with the guru. He starts to talk nonsense things with the guru. He starts to behave wrongly with the guru. Now remember, there are two things which I want to bring out also when I talk about Kama and Krodha. Puja Guruji Swami Subodhananji used to bring it out very beautifully. I remember what he used to say here. He says, sometimes desire is better than actually anger. Why? I'll tell you. If a man has too much of desire, sometimes after fulfilling the desire, he may be internally feeling ashamed of his behavior. But remember, anger is not like that. Now, a man full of desire would want to hide his or her desire within him and feels ashamed at many times. But remember, a man of desire would never want to showcase his or her own desires. But that is not how the vritti called anger is all about. The thought called anger is all about. Anger has not even a wee bit it ashamed thing at all. Anger always wants to showcase itself. The more you showcase, that's when the anger feels the satisfaction. And Bhagwan says, Sammohat smriti vibramaha. The moment sammoha happens, the delusion happens, and whatever this person has learned till now, that thing which was in his memory becomes unavailable for his or her usage. Whatever this person learned from his guru, whatever this person learned and gathered as wisdom, whatever culture was learned by this person, when we need it at that time, our memory is not able to surface it or bring it out for our usage. This is what is called as smriti vibrama. Means what? Whatever we learned, whatever we studied, whatever we understood, it doesn't come to our usage at all. And remember, at the level of anger, when the anger is there, that knowledge is there. It's there in the memory. It's there in our memory, but it is not available for us. It's not wiped out. I told you one thing very clearly. Whatever spirituality you gain here, it travels with you life after life. You will start from wherever you leave in this life and the next life onwards. It is not that it is wiped out, but the thing is, it is not available for you. Smriti Bhramshat Buddhi Nashaha. The moment memory becomes unavailable to you, intellect uses its ability to make decision. That is what is called Buddhi Nashaha. Bhagwan says is intellect loses its capability which is what, or wisdom's capability is lost by the intellect, that is what is called buddhi nasha. The intellect is destroyed. Remember, intellect functions due to the strength of the memory. Intellect functions because of the memory. It's like I'm giving you an example. Just think, you have very good RAM in your computer, but hard disk is not available. Will it function? It won't function. Hard disk is what, where the data is stored. Even the operating system is stored on the hard disk, right? It switches on and off because of that. RAM only cannot work. So they say, the intellect loses its because the memory is unavailable. So intellect picks up data to think on what? From memory only, no? Intellect picks up data from the memory to think over it. So the moment the memory is unavailable, that means intellect loses its capability to actually think. That means what? Intellect, the memory becomes completely unavailable for, or the intellect to function. Buddhi nashat pranashyati. The moment and intellect is destroyed, means what? Man is destroyed. Because why man is destroyed? Why Bhagwan uses this term here? Man is man because of the intellect. If intellect is not there, that person cannot, that being cannot be called as man. And the meaning what Bhagwan Bhashyakar writes here for pranashyati is Purushartha ayogyo bhavati. Those four purusharth which are there for a human being to do, which is dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, this person becomes incapable or non-capable of achieving any of those things. And purushartha, the actual literal meaning of the purushartha is whatever is ought to be gained by a man, and that becomes unavailable, that man becomes incapable to gain them. Means what? The man falls down on the path of vertical. This man falls down, and this downfall of this man starts. Remember, that is where it started with dhyayata. Dhyayata means shobhan adhyas purvak dhyayata, means that this is going to add beauty to my life. This is why Bhagwan says, at the level of dhyayata, at the level of thinking itself, at the level of thinking over an object itself, one should exercise control. That is what Bhagwan wants to explain in this particular verse. Rest of this verse we'll see in the next session. कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावात् करोमि यद्यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि. श्रीमन्नारायणायेति समर्पयामि. ओम पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. ओम शांति शांति शांति. हरि ओम. श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः. हरि ओम. ओम तत्सत्.